Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this video. Today, as I'm sure you already know at this point, I am drawing Fred and George Weasley from Harry Potter. And if you just so happen to be asking why, even though you're probably not because it's not like my videos have any rhythm to them anyways, it's because I only just recently watched the movies, and I know what you're thinking. Only just recently? Where have you been the past 10 years? Living under a rock? And to that I say, probably. But I am also notoriously late to everything, so this is not off-brand for me. Point is, I recently watched Harry Potter, and I know what your second question is. Have you read the books? The answer is no. I still haven't read the books. But I'm not much of a book person, and my mom's read the books, and the internet's read the books, so if I ever have any questions, I can just ask, and I don't have to read the books myself. I don't know why, that just makes me feel justified in my not needing to read the books, because it's like, why do I need to read it? Everybody else already knows all the answers for me. If there's anything that's like, oh, the book was better, like, I know about it already. But anyways, that's not about this. This is not about that. Point is, when I was watching the movies, there was a character that stood out to me, my immediate favorite. And I'll give you a hint on which character that was. It was not Fred and George, because actually my first favorite character was Ron. Which brings up the question, why am I drawing Fred and George if my favorite character is Ron? And the funny story about that is that Ron is actually not my first favorite character. Let me explain. When I was first watching the movies, my immediate favorite character was Ron, but as the movies went on, I realized that Ron is not my first favorite character. First in the timeline, not first on my list. Fred and George came in and stole that title, like the mischief makers they are. And thus, Ron has been outdone by his older brothers, and so, you know, I feel kinda bad because Ron's always stuck playing second fiddle, on screen, and in our hearts. But alas, this video is not about him, so I can talk more about him if I do a video about him, but might I just say, second fiddle is a very important part of an orchestra. Just like Ron is a very important character who doesn't get the recognition that he deserves. But anyways, Fred and George. I don't know why, but they are just my favorites. The moment I noticed their existence, I became extremely fascinated by them, and they just slowly became my favorite characters. And when I say notice them, I mean I didn't even really know that they existed until a few movies in. And the reason for that is because I, for some reason, just don't pay attention to background characters a lot of the time. Especially on the first watch, like, who's paying attention to the background characters? Like, you know Percy, their brother? Yeah, I didn't even know he existed. It wasn't until later that I was like, oh, he's a Weasley? I was so surprised, and it was so obvious. So yeah, basically, if a background character doesn't catch my attention as somebody that I find interesting and want to pay attention to, then my brain is just gonna be like, you know, they're not important because they're not like the main characters. They're not someone that the story is like telling you to pay attention to. So my brain's not gonna pay attention, which means that I just forget about that character's existence. And if I see them again, I probably won't remember that I've seen them before. Moral of the story is, Fred and George did catch my attention, and I never looked back from there. I mean, what's not to love about them? But okay, I know what you're thinking. Or at least I always say I know what you're thinking. Let's just pretend I know what you're thinking. If there are two of them, how can they both be my favorite character? Well, first of all, because they are. And secondly, if you were to be evil and make me choose, George is actually my favorite. I don't really have a reason for that. It kind of started because when I first started paying attention to them, the only one whose name I could remember was George, which is weird because it's not like Fred is a hard name to remember. But yeah, for like a movie or two, I was just like, they're both George. So that's part of the reason why George is my favorite, because I was just like, yeah, the one whose name I could remember, that one's my favorite. But I still kind of stand by that because, I don't know, the more I know about the characters, the more I'm like, I think George is actually my favorite. And so I don't know how I feel about the fact that he's the one who didn't die, because on the one hand, he didn't die, which, you know, is good, but on the other hand, I feel like, what's worse? Being dead, or being the twin who has to live without your other twin now? Like, that sounds kind of worse. And nobody talks about that. They're just like, poor Fred. And I'm like, yes, also poor Fred, but like, Poor George. And that's not to say that I like Fred less, because they're both my favorite. And I'm still traumatized by Fred's death. But if I was to choose, George is my favorite. And from what I've seen of the actors, the actor who plays George is also kind of my favorite out of the two of them, so I don't know. I guess that goes to show that even though they are very similar, they're not the same person. And if you have a favorite between them, let me know which one is your favorite. My mom is so confused by the fact that they're my favorites because I literally talk about them like every time we talk about Harry Potter. And like, it's kind of understandable of like a why do you like them so much? Because they don't have very much screen time, which I think is an absolute crime. They have like a max of like 30 minutes. Like, I know that there are characters that got less than that, but they totally deserved more screen time. And also, by the fact that I have a favorite out of the two of them, because she's like, aren't they exactly the same? And even though, yes, they are very similar, they're not the same. And I've actually started to be able to kind of tell the difference between them. The only problem is that I can tell that there's a difference, but I can't usually place which one is which means that my telling the difference between them is kind of useless, because what's even the point of knowing there's a difference if you don't know which one is which? But I digress. To recap, Fred and George are my favorite characters, and Ron is my second favorite character. And if you would like to see me draw Ron or any of the other characters or anything from any other show, let me know in the comments, and I will take your comment into consideration. And can I just say, I think the actors for these movies did a really good job portraying the characters, at least in my opinion. I think that they fit perfectly. Like, I wouldn't change pretty much anybody. And Fred and George are no exceptions. I think the actors did an amazing job. I absolutely love them. And actually, when I first saw the movies, we were in a hotel room just watching like kind of parts of it while we were at the hotel. And my mom had already seen it at that point, but I hadn't. And I had asked her if she knew if the twins were played by the same person or if it was like actual twins, and she was like, I don't know. But yes, they are in fact played by actual twins, who are pretty much the real life versions of the Weasley twins, which I love because we need more twins in media, especially twins that are actually played by twins. And you know, one of the reasons I love Fred and George so much is because I just love twins. I don't know what it is about them, but I've always just had this fascination with twins, especially identical twins. And Fred and George are by far my favorite twins in all of media. Like, I can't even think of any other characters that are live action identical twins played by identical twins, and to where they were like actual normal characters, you know? Not like The Shining or whatever that movie is with like the twin girls. That's probably not the right movie, but you get what I mean. Like, if you have any characters that kind of fit the bill, let me know in the comments, because I need to know if there are any other characters like them out there. The only characters that come close, in my opinion, that are like identical twins, that are kind of just like normal people, are either twins that are like played by the same person, like in Parent Trap, or characters that are animated, like Dipper and Mabel from Gravity Falls, or Jim and Tim from Kim Possible, which are probably my second favorite twins because they're very similar in what I like about Fred and George, except for the fact that they're animated, so they definitely get lower on the list, because that means, you know, they're not actual identical twins, unless they're voiced by identical twins, but I seriously doubt that, because why would they do that? They're probably just voiced by the same person, honestly. But yeah, let me know if there are any identical twins that are similar to Fred and George, because I need to know. But I don't think anybody could ever beat them. I think they'll always be my favorite twins. In fact, Oliver and James, the actors who play the Weasley twins, are probably my favorite twins in all of just life, because I've never seen real life twins that have like that magic, I guess you would call it, that twins have, particularly twins in media. Obviously not to the extent, like, they're not actually like the Weasley twins where they talk back and forth and finish each other's sentences kind of thing, because I don't think there's anybody out there that is actually like that. That's kind of unrealistic, but even without trying, they just have like the twin magic. I don't know how to explain it. But I've never really known of any real life twins that had that feeling, which is so cool. And also, they just seem like very fun, cool people. And when drawing this picture, I actually wanted Fred and George to look like the actors who played them. So instead of just doing like my own interpretation of the characters, I tried to make them look like the movie portrayal of them. Because, like I said, the actors portrayed them pretty much perfectly, and there's not really anything I would change about them. But I mainly bring this up because I definitely tried to make it look like them when it comes to their features, like the face shape or the nose, the eyes, just different things that can be interpreted into my style, because my style is, stylized, but I try to keep features of the original character, and it's always interesting when you're taking a real life person and interpreting their features into a character, if that makes any sense. So I hope it looks like them. I think it does. Let me know what you think. One of the things that I had to decide on was their haircut, because throughout the movies, they have had a few different haircuts, and even though the one I went with, which is based off of their, last look, even though that style is kind of the obvious choice and probably my favorite, I still took into consideration their other haircuts because I almost gave them their long hair, which is weird for me because I don't really like when guys have long hair, but they can kind of pull it off, and for some reason, when I think of them being most mischievous, I think of them with their long hair, which I don't know if that makes any sense because I feel like they only had long hair for one movie, didn't they? I believe it was The Goblet of Fire. I guess they were in that movie a lot or something. I'm not really sure, but when I first imagined this picture, I definitely imagined them with long hair. But I'm glad I went with this hairstyle because I really like it, but one thing I was unsure about was how I was gonna do it because the way it's cut, I don't really know how to describe it. Hair is sometimes difficult to interpret. I don't know how to say that word anymore. Into a drawing, but I think that this looks a lot like their hair. So I'm actually pretty happy with the way this picture turns out when it comes to how accurate my characters look to the original characters, because in my opinion, I think it looks like them. So let me know what you think. Something that I actually changed to be more movie accurate were their wands. Originally, I just kind of drew random wands, just kind of sticks, because I didn't really know what to draw. I knew everybody had their own wands, but you can't really see them that well in the movies because, they're just sticks and they're far away and you can't really see any detail. But then it was bothering me, the fact that they were just plain and boring, and so I looked, and I think I got their wands looking pretty accurate to their in-movie wands. I also changed Fred's hand that's holding the wand because I didn't like the way it looked before, and I think that this looks more like the way that they hold the wands in the movies. Random side note, I just wanted to say, I think it's so cute that Fred and George endearingly call each other Freddy and Georgie. It's so cute and sad, and I just wanted you all to know in case you hadn't noticed that. Also, so I can't help but every time I hear the name George, I think of Georgie because of this one Arthur episode. Does anybody remember Arthur? Anyways, so there was one character named George, and then the tough guy character was you need to be more tough. We're gonna start by giving you a tough name. And he's got any ideas? And George is what about Georgie? And for some reason, that's just engraved into my brain. I don't usually think of it when I think of George Weasley, though, but sometimes, and that's probably why I could remember it in the first place. It was just Georgie. But then when Fred says it to George, it's after he's been hurt, and he's how you feeling, Georgie? And it's so cute. And then before the final battle, George says, "You good, Freddy?" And then he's yeah. And then he dies. It's so sad. And one thing that I wanted to do was to surround them with things that are important to their character or that sort of thing. So I hope you can tell what everything is and that it is accurate to them in your opinion. So I put the Gryffindor symbol, I did fireworks obviously, the Marauders map, which I attempted to recreate. And I always want to call it Majora's Mask, which is a Zelda thing. I also put the little potions that they made and then drank to get past the age barrier to put their names into the cup so that they could participate in the game. But it wasn't super clear what those looked like, so I just kind of went with what I wanted and kind of what I thought it looked like. For one thing, they looked green, so I made them green, even though that's kind of gross. Also, am I the only person who is like, why would you want to be a part of that? Like, I would definitely not put my name in there. And then I also added the Quidditch club thing in the ball. I don't really know anything about Quidditch, but I'm pretty sure Fred and George are beaters, and they carry around the sticks, and that's pretty much all I know. But I felt like it was a good addition for them, since in the first couple of movies, a lot of the times that we see them is like Quidditch related. But yeah, so let me know if you think that stuff is accurate to their characters, and if there was anything that you think I should have added but didn't. Also, speaking of the twins being Gryffindor, am I the only person who thinks the sorting was a little bit off, or just like very Gryffindor heavy? Like, I feel like it was kind of for plot, because aren't the houses supposed to be based off of things like personality and all of that? And I just feel like you had a lot of Gryffindors who weren't necessarily all matching. I don't know, I'm not like sold on that idea, but I kind of feel like some of the other characters might have actually kind of made more sense in other houses. Like, Ron kind of feels like a Hufflepuff to me, and the twins could totally pass as Slytherin. Like, aren't Slytherins supposed to be, like, ambitious and cunning and not always following the rules or doing what people tell them to? And I mean, that kind of sounds like the twins if you ask me. But I don't know, maybe I'm just being biased because I'm a Slytherin, and maybe I just subconsciously want them to be in the same house as me. I mean, they do work as Gryffindor, so let me know what you think, if there are characters that you think may have been sorted weirdly, because I'm not sure. But anyways, let me know which twin is your favorite if you do have one, which Harry Potter character is your favorite, and if you'd like me to draw any other Harry Potter characters or any other characters from anything. But we're getting to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope you like the way this picture turns out, and I hope you like Fred and George just as much as I do. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.